Hanuman Ji! Very windy up here today. I think even windier than it was when the storm was here. The camera won't get blown off its little precarious perch. I don't know if you can see the altar, but you probably have a pretty good view of Hanuman Ji! Great servant around, great servant. Oh, my guardians. Too windy for the bees today. You never know. Sometimes it dies down in just an instant. But it's been pretty consistent today. So welcome once again to the high place. Really clean, really clear energy, very kinetic energy. I mean the wind, but the quality of the wind, the energy of the wind, and the energy of the light that is very different today. I noticed that today too. And I don't know a lot about astrology or astronomy, but I know it's the vernal equinox. Halfway between the winter solstice and the summer solstice, right? Did I get that right? Anyway, the spring equinox. And then the fall equinox, obviously halfway between, on the other side, between summer solstice and winter solstice. So it's March 20th. Probably my last time to come out here and pray. Very grateful, very blessed to have been able to come out here and pray as much as I have. It's funny, I used to maybe make it out here like once a year when I first discovered the place. And I guess it's been going on, decade at least. And then I kept coming back and exploring more and more of this area, this wilderness area, this Lake Mead recreational area, particularly the bowl of fire and the valley of fire. And I would explore more and more and more, and then the time, I can't remember the first time I came up to the high place, but it was readily apparent. It was spectacular, and a lot of sign. I remember that day, the first time I came up, there was bighorn sheep on the ramp up here, it where the outer temple altar and the Ganesha temple are. You know, and I think I shared some pictures of that, but that was the first big sign. And I haven't seen any bighorn out here for a long time, which is sad. I hope they're flourishing. The last time I saw a bighorn was when I attempted to scale Hanuman. You know, the central axis of this vortex here, and saw I think 4 different bighorn that day, and they came up behind me because I got up to like the point where you can't make the top. It's way too dangerous and scrabbly. You'd fall, and then you'd fall a long way. But you could get to like the bottom of the face. You can't quite make it out because it's in shadow. There's the red rock, the sandstone formation wall where the topsoil's gotten eroded away, and then above that is like, you know, another wall that's kind of like the north face of Hanuman. And I made it to the base of that, which is about as far as you can go, and I skirted up around the other side, and I put down some tobacco and made some prayers. And a lot of you know that particular trip on my way back, I took a jump and broke my ankle. You know, and then spent the next like 20, I forget, I go over this so many times in my head, not so much anymore, but like it took me from 2:30 in the afternoon, which is when I about broke my ankle, to I think I made it to the emergency room at around noontime the next day. So it took me, there's 12, 18, 19, 20 hours to crawl down from elevation, because I was probably about 3,000 feet up over there, because it's a little higher than here. This is about 25. And then, crawl and hobble and hop my way out, which took a lot longer than I thought it would. Interesting, very interesting night. And I felt the whole time, because this was 2018, that Lefty Hanuman was watching me all the way, because he could, the route that I took, from over there on the base of Hanuman all the way down and whatnot, if you stood here on the altar, you could watch my progress all the way out, almost unimpeded. So I sensed that he was watching over me. And it was a spectacular night, one of those nights where it was perfect temperature, good light from the moon. I don't know if it was a full moon that night. I don't think it was. But it was, pretty good light from the moon. And, saw a lot of wonderful things, coyotes that came in, swung close to check me out to see whether or not I was a meal. Yeah, spectacular night. And I haven't gone back up onto that. I went back up not too long after I broke my ankle, and I healed up enough to be able to go up and put down tobacco and say some prayers at the place where I broke my ankle. But I haven't gone back up there since, and I probably won't. I think there's some energy that you have to leave well enough alone, and such a tremendous affinity, focus, humble gratitude for that energy and Hanuman. That's probably sacred ground that I should cross. That's just my thing. But everywhere else is. Being over there, it's interesting. I think I saw that hawk the last time circling up here, but I usually don't see hawk. I see these huge ravens, usually in a pair, and I call them the guardians. And there might be a couple pair, but they're massive, and this is their hunting ground, I guess. I'll have to look into Raven medicine a little bit deeper and see. Anyway, so I think this is going to be my last time out here for a while. My mother has her angiogram this week, probably angioplasty, with the balloons and opening up her, arteries, and then, probably some stents or whatnot to get her heart back in appropriate working order. If she doesn't do that, that's, it's another heart attack at some point. So, trying to get that squared away before I leave. And that's supposed to happen on the 24th, and I'm supposed to leave on the 26th on Friday. And that's why I'm out here to pray. Pray for that. Obviously a lot of other things. But that's first and foremost in my mind and in my heart, in my prayers. And so I'm blessed to be able to come to the place where I feel closest to Spirit. And heaven forbid something. If I have to stay longer, I'll stay longer. Because it's my service, and I accept that. And as much as I might have resistance around some of these things, because I'm torn between my life back on the East Coast in New York, Dana and Ike and my friends, Jason and my brothers, and I have certain things in my life that are non-negotiable. I think that's the best way to kind of describe service. The things within you that you orient towards, that are non-negotiable in terms of service. That this is just what you do. And I'm of the belief of that with my mother, my parents, my loved ones, those closest to me. And I'm learning to expand that circle of service. And I think ultimately, it expands through us in such a way as the unconditional love of all things, as exemplified by Lefty, that current of energy, that space, that quality, those characteristics, that experience. So the last time I was here, I talked about my experience of Hanuman. And that was good, It really felt good about that. Talked about Hanuman quite a bit, describing my experience. Subjects. But today there's a aspect that came through. And connected to a film, back in, I guess it was 2000, 2002, 2003, I forget exactly when it came out, but it was the sequel to The Matrix. It was the Matrix Reloaded. It was the second one. And the storyline, the Wachowski storyline, really got into a deeper narrative around the Oracle. character that really stuck out. And, it became a stronger and stronger theme or message or something, teaching. Amazing films, number one. But vehicles of lessons, upon lessons, deeper and deeper layers. But the character that really kind of ruined me in terms of an understanding was Seraph. And he's in the hallway of all the different doors with the character Neo, and he opens the door for Neo to go see the Oracle in that iconic scene in the playground when he meets the Smiths. Fights them. But when Seraph opens the door, Neo asks Seraph, what are you? Because he knew he was a program from the machine world. And Seraph responded, I protect that which matters most. And in the context of that film, the themes that film was exploring, that was like a sledgehammer, maybe not so much at the time because it sounded like, one of those, one of those designed to be profound statements, number one, from a writing perspective, a script perspective, but, if we all accept that, everything at that level, one, is coming through. So that statement was a watershed for me. And, this is 2000, 20 odd years ago, or abouts. And that lesson grew within me, and I immediately, connected it to Hanuman. Not at that point, but like as it stayed with me and grew with me, and then as I grew in this orientation towards my path, and the path of service, it connected in that way. And so, I protect that which matters most. For a long time, I carried it as a way of describing, that I protect the sacred, in my life, the sacred. Sorry about the wind. So I'll try and talk more directly to the camera and louder. And I had a teacher, Abhyasati, great servant of Ram, great servant of Sita, great servant of Lakshman Jai Hanumanji, Abhyasati. And he said to me at one point, because, I was at some point talking to him about this, and he said, and it came through actually in a meditation, whether it was with the medicine or without, and and he reaffirmed it because he said, the sacred needs no protecting. So I had to kind of take that, that righteous, arrogant kind of, I protect the sacred, because the sacred certainly does not need protection. It is, and it's unassailable and irrefutable and undeniable, and so I modified it to be like I protect, the light, and if you put the light in the same category as the sacred, then it too doesn't require protection. So then I modified it again to say, well, then if I if it's not appropriate for me to protect the sacred or the light because it's beyond my understanding and capability, then I protect those whom are lost in the dark. And I held that for a long time. And then I modified it again, in the orientation in terms of service and home. That I protect those closest to me, those who I love so dearly, and would give my life for. And then it connected to a much older lesson, because it started to mirror, or at least I started to understand better the lesson of Krishna and Arjuna, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the Bhagavad Gita. And I had picked up the Gita over 30 years ago. And the story and a lot of the lessons within that, but one of the things that Arjuna, it's a dialogue between God and Arjuna, Krishna being the avataric form that comes through, and Krishna collapsed in the chariot, in the midst of the battlefield between the great armies, and couldn't, he was paralyzed. It's like, I can't, because the other army was comprised of family, dear friends and teachers. And Krishna, in the midst of that dialogue, lifted him up, lifted up Arjuna, and said, you have to do your duty. In this life, you have your duty, your karma. Some could say destiny. And so I've been working with that for years, trying to really feel into that, of what is it that I'm here to do. And it's a lot easier for me to understand that, at least approach the understanding, by couching my life in terms of service. I protect that which matters most. Couch it in my day-to-day life. I protect my mother. I protect Dana. I protect Ike. I protect my friends and my extended family and my acquaintances and my teachers, to the best of my ability, in the ways that I am able to do that, and I consider, these prayers in service of all those whom I love, and even my enemies. I'm learning that to be able to approach, again, through an intercessor, that which is unknowable, indescribable, but at the very least could be, in the terms of jnana yoga, the yoga of intellect, the yoga of intellect. Couch it in terms of unconditional love, which is, I work with that in the medicine space one time very specifically. And the way that the lesson transpired, at least the way that I interpreted it, was I approached it from the perspective of teach me, show me, help me understand, help me hold unconditional love, or self-love, excuse me, or unconditional self-love. And and I was able to hold that, and the manifestation of that prayer and that energy held me. And I could root that in my being. It permeated my being, so I could have a memory of that, an impression, a visceral impression of that. But the medicine and the spirit of La Madre, grandmother, great teacher, one of the greatest, upped the ante and then said, okay, you held that, that's good. Now hold unconditional love for everything. Right? And whoa. From the energetic manifestation, experiential, I realized how difficult it is to hold that, or probably perhaps impossible to hold that, because I think you can't, at least the sense that I had then was this vessel, this Barry Fleming, this man, this body, this mind, these emotions, these energies, the soul, the spirit couldn't hold that because it's the absolute. And so maybe without this body and this mind and this personality, when I leave this place, and when we leave this place, we'll be able to hold that and understand that. But just a glimpse of that was absolutely astonishing. Praying this to be my last tobacco for a while. Very strong energy, very strong spirit, so I asked tobacco for guidance and protection and healing, and the strength to more appropriately carry that, honor that. So I was thinking about that on the way up, and thinking about the equanimity of the light and the dark, the good and the evil. The yin and the yang, and how we have to hold both, and develop an understanding of both, because inherently we're made up of both. And then when there's an imbalance, it creates chaos in the world. I think it's pretty apparent, the chaos, from the yang energy, the masculine, if I've got that correct, I forget, yin or yang, I'm pretty sure it's yang. And a lot of people interpret it as like the patriarchy and the masculine, and these are good ways to approach it. They're nuanced, obviously, but it does seem, from an energetic perspective, an imbalance. And more, I am being called to try to help correct that imbalance in prayer, particularly. The only way to really address it at such a holistic level. And I respect those, my teachers and the communities and my brothers and sisters that approach it from that very high place. Manifestation of equanimity, the balance of the light and the dark. but I'm just a man, and I just consider myself a student, a haphazard, stumbling student, and you understand there's going to be a spectrum of that. And maybe another level would be an adept, so a journeyman, and you can understand there's a spectrum of that. And then the next level maybe is mastery, and you understand there's a spectrum of that. So all these spectrums that we experience, and not necessarily that they're sequential, but all these different configurations. And the configuration that I feel that I'm in is this grounded sense of service to my immediate family and those that I love. And I'm learning to expand that out. And so I don't disrespect, no disrespect whatsoever, that people are praying at that level and trying to embody, root that in this time, in this place. So I respect that. I'm trying to do that as well as function, in my day-to-day life, in my day-to-day world, the world that's not, the high place. And that's a very different kind of functioning. And so I had to have different tools to be able to function in that respect. And so one of the tools is probably the wrong word. One of the orientations is like this, I feel very strongly about certain things, and assert, those things. It kind of goes back to the idea that I've talked about, or the lesson of the shaman, or the medicine person, who lives on the outskirts of the village, and does so for very good reasons, to be removed from the day-to-day drama of the village people. And then that person is looked at as being crazy, dangerous, mad, but also as a person that has an orientation to spirit to be able to help heal, particularly. And so those of us that are students or adepts in the village have a little bit of a different interpretation or a different orientation than, say, like the medicine person, who has developed a level of mastery, a very high adept or a very, high mastery. So connecting those two of, the lessons and the orientations of the student in that spectrum to the adepts in that spectrum and the masters in that spectrum. And so we have different ways to go about our day-to-day life, different ways to pray, different ways to serve. So how is it that you are serving? How is it that you are oriented towards your prayers? Any prayers? In all our relations. We'll talk to us. I've always had a really strong affinity for the stone people. This place hums with, that energy, that primordial, deep in the earth, rooted energy. And, it's the Dakota Nazim, he who stands cloaked in stone, he who stands cloaked in stone. So there's great spirit manifest, obviously in everything, but in terms of my sensation, understanding, very apparent in terms of the expression through stone here, stone people, grandfathers who hold time. Let's puff. So I protect that which matters most. And in the orientation that I have in my life, it's my mother, it's Ike, it's Dana, family, my friends, my acquaintances, my teachers, and my enemies. Because even our enemies, that expression that's of the inequality, the imbalance, they are acting out of ignorance, disconnection, not connected to spirit, not connected to any approachable understanding of unconditional love. And so, yeah, I have to pray for them as well. And, in my day-to-day life, that's very difficult, as you can imagine. But how do you pray for Wenico, evil, which seems so readily apparent in our world at this time? So I pray for all of us. Pray for myself. Pray for my mother. Pray for Ike. Pray for Dana. Pray for my family, my extended family, Dana's extended family. All those I love and their extended family. My friends and their extended families. My teachers and their extended families. Our communities, our tribes. And I pray to bring down Hanuman, great servant of Ram, great servant of Sita, great servant of Lakshman, Jai Hanumanji, forever and ever and ever. Jai Hanumanji, Sita Ram. Grateful to this place, this great altar of Lefty and great altar of Hanuman, the high place. The absolutely spectacular, beautiful high place. And I was also thinking maybe one day I'll lead people out here. And maybe they too will want to pray here. Everyone's got their own cathedrals, right? This is mine. But maybe some people would appreciate this place. I know they would. And maybe, in my healing path and my healing modalities, maybe there's a sacrament that we can work with together, that has an appropriateness for this place and this type of prayer, this walking in a sacred manner. Certainly too dangerous for working with some of the medicines. But other medicines, really connect or help you connect. Would be complementary. Something like Chuma, San Pedro, or Santa Maria, cannabis. I'd like that, If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Certainly not something to be promoted in a less than humble and gracious way, with gratitude and humility and reverence. So I always struggle with those things. Promotion of prayer, sacred. That's just my thing. Not, it's no judgment. So maybe one day, whoever's watching, you can come out here with me and pray. Or perhaps someday, someone will have heard these prayers and will come out here themselves, and find this place, a high place. I've left enough sign, enough directions. So even if I'm not here, this place will be here. Always. Way, 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 oh hey, way, oh hey, way, oh hey, oh hey, ah hey, hey, way, oh hey, oh hey, way, oh hey, oh hey, ha, way, oh ha, way, oh hey, ah hey, Tonka shela wa mayanka yo, le mie cha teke ya nawa.